All right, everyone, let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. Welcome to the Daily Planet Theater. My name is Chris, and I'm curator for the space here in the museum, which means that I get the special pleasure and privilege of introducing our special guests that we have here at the museum. And especially on days like today, I get to savor the work that I do and the opportunities that I have to be a part of a really cool institution. This Museum of Natural Sciences does incredible research, innovating stuff, groundbreaking, and we're learning more and more about the way the world, even the universe, works every single day. And today, we're going to learn a little bit about the way the world used to be from the paleontology research team here at the Museum of Natural Sciences. We're going to hear from Dr. Lindsay Zanno, the head of paleontology here at the museum and associate research professor at North Carolina State University. We are really excited that we have, I'll say, one of the best paleontology research teams that's out there. At least I think so. I am biased. And I'm very excited that so many people across all 3 floors of the museum here today, and everyone hopefully watching online, thank you for being here and for joining us, especially our special guests, and to all of you. By show of hands, who likes dinosaurs? Whose favorite dinosaur is a Tyrannosaur? Okay, a few people are like, well, if I saw one coming for me, it wouldn't be my favorite. Well, Tyrannosaurus rex, right? Most famous dinosaur of them all. And a lot of people, when asked that question, would say that that's their favorite dinosaur. But it's not the only Tyrannosaur in the world. And what researchers have known about it for a long time has, for that particular dinosaur, we've learned a lot. But there's more than just this one cool predator roaming the planet. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the stage over to Dr. Lindsay Zanno. Let's learn about some of the other amazing creatures that once lived on this planet. Please put your hands together and welcome to the stage, Dr. Lindsay Zanno.
Thanks so much. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a really exciting day for the whole paleontology team, many of whom are standing up on the stage with me. We are so excited because after 6 years of preparation and hard research and hunting the badlands of the American West for new dinosaurs, we are able to announce one of our new discoveries to you today. And that is this little critter, North America's newest mini Tyrannosaur. And we named this guy Moros intrepidus, which translates to the harbinger of doom. Explain in a little bit. So Moros is one of the tiniest tyrannosaurs that's ever been discovered. It's also the oldest tyrannosaur that we found here in the Cretaceous of North America. It extends the record of tyrannosaurs by a whopping 15 million years, which even by our paleontological standards is a pretty long time. So what did we know about Tyrannosaur evolution? Moros really helps us understand not just the evolution of things like T-Rex, but the evolution of a long, successful lineage of predatory dinosaurs that we call Tyrannosaurs. So here in North America, we had our first Tyrannosaurs appearing around the late Jurassic. This is around 150 million years ago. So these are pretty primitive Tyrannosaurs. They're small-bodied, small to medium-bodied. And they're actually inhabiting these ecosystems with a whole host of other types of carnivorous dinosaurs, including allosaurs. Now, allosaurs were much larger and much fiercer than these small tyrannosaurs, and they were actually top of the food chain at this time. Here's the interesting thing. After we leave the Jurassic, the North American record of tyrannosaurs goes basically completely blank for 70 million years. Okay? We have to go all the way up to the very end of the late Cretaceous, about 81 million years ago, before we find another decent skeleton of a tyrannosaur. So that's 70 million years, and we haven't had any tyrannosaur species to learn from on the North American continent. The issue at hand here is that during this gap in our understanding, this black hole in our knowledge of Tyrannosaur evolution, Tyrannosaurs went from being those small-bodied, subsidiary, secondary hunters to ruling the roost, right? They went from wallflower to prom king, somewhere along this line, and we haven't had the fossils to be able to figure out that story. So what our team has been doing is we've been hunting a lot of places where most paleontologists don't go. This is essentially why we don't have a fossil record from these time periods for dinosaur evolution. And so we've been looking in rocks that are about 96 million years, right in the middle of this 70 million year gap. And these are the rocks from which the bones of Moros come from. And we've actually brought them down for you today, so we'll be able to let you have a close look at the bones of this new animal. So we've been hunting in this area. This is central Utah. We've been scouring every square meter, sometimes in 120-degree heat, on foot, looking for the remains of these new types of dinosaurs actually simply sticking out of the hillside. And we've been doing this with our colleagues at the Field Museum and Stellenbosch University for about 10 years now. And back in 2012, we stumbled on something really rare, which was the remains of the leg bones of one of these small predatory dinosaurs actually sticking out of the side of the hill. And here's Lisa, actually carefully excavating those bones from where they were discovered. Now, if you guys couldn't be with us that day, but if you were with us that day, this is actually what you would have seen. These are the bones, the leg bones of Moros sticking out of the side of the hill. So this was the very moment when I first turned that corner and saw the bones of Moros sticking out. And you can see that bones that are laying on the surface actually become really fragmentary because the surface is swelling in the ice and the heat and breaking that bone into a million different little pieces. Well, as we dug into this site, we found more bones. These are two cute little toe bones of Moros that you can see that are coming out during the excavation. So all in all, we recovered a fairly nice associated right leg of this new dinosaur, including parts of the upper and lower leg and parts of a really long, really beautiful foot. Now, we'd also been finding tiny little teeth in this formation. Now, these are not teeth we can be sure belong to Moros because it wasn't found exactly with the leg, but they're found nearby. Most often when we find plant-eating dinosaur skeletons, we'll find tiny little teeth of tyrannosaurs in those same quarries. Now, the problem with finding tiny teeth, though, is that you don't know if the teeth belong to a juvenile of a big animal or a big species. And so that's historically been our problem with understanding whether this was really, truly a tiny tyrannosaur. And if you want to see the difference between a T-Rex tooth, which is here, it's pretty impressive, and a Moros tooth, which is here, it gives you a sense of the scale, the size difference between Moros and an animal like T-Rex. So we had been finding these teeth for a long time. We thought we might have a tiny tyrannosaur, but we couldn't be sure. And that's one of the things that makes the skeleton of Moros so important, because once we had a hind limb, we could do a study of that hind limb. We could cut a piece of the upper leg bone. So we'd take that leg bone, we actually cut it on a saw. Okay? We ground it down till it was paper thin, and we looked at it under the microscope. And what's interesting about dinosaurs is that they grow a little bit like trees. They have an annual growth cycle, so they grow quickly at some parts of the year, and then they sort of stop growing at others. And when they do that, they leave rings inside their bones. And we can count up those rings, and we can determine for how long, how many years that individual dinosaur was growing before it died. And that was able to tell us that Moros was not a juvenile of a really big tyrannosaur, but actually was older than 7 years old, and its growth was slowing down, so it was approaching its adult body size. So it really was a tiny animal. So some of the other things that beautiful hind limb told us was that early on in tyrannosaur evolution, tyrannosaurs were exceptionally fast, agile animals. So this is a little bit about their ecology that helped to make them so successful for hunting and competing with other dinosaurs. And we also know from animals that lived at around the same time in Asia, from their skulls, that these animals had super sophisticated sensory systems. So they had great vision, they had great senses. So what does Moros then teach us about the rise or ascent of tyrannosaurs on the North American continent? Well, these early tyrannosaurs lived in the shadow of these giant allosaur dinosaurs for about 50 million years. They remained small. This is kind of like the jackal to the lion in today's modern ecosystems. So their strategy was based on hunting in the shadows of some of these other dinosaurs. But soon after Moros lived, these bigger dinosaurs went extinct. They disappeared from the North American continent as a result of climate change at the time. So the planet was getting warmer, sea level was rising, and it caused these allosaurs to disappear. And that gave these little tyrannosaurs that were living there at the time the opportunity then to seize the day and get really, really big in a really short amount of time, growing about 10 times in body mass in a span of just about 10 to 15 million years, ultimately ascending to the top of the food chain at the late Cretaceous. There's one other really interesting thing that Moros tells us. When we studied the family tree of Moros, we found that its closest relatives didn't come from North America. In fact, they came from Asia. Now, at about the same time Moros is living, these small tyrannosaurs are inhabiting Asia, but Asia is essentially an island cut off from North America. What we've been able to discover is that a land bridge formed between Asia and North America at this time, and that allowed all types of dinosaurs that were evolving in Asia to walk over to the North American continent, including likely Moros' ancestors, which ultimately would go on to evolve into things like T-Rex. So our iconic late Cretaceous North American ecosystems didn't start here in North America, they really started in Asia. And so we have these migrant or intrepid dinosaurs to thank for our incredible animals. So with that, I just want to thank the other co-authors on our paper, our study. Haviv Avrahami, who's up here, studied the teeth of Moros, and Aurora did the growth study work. We also had Terry Gates, who helped us with our body mass reconstructions, and some geologists who helped us date Moros and figure out how old it was. Of course, we want to extend a special thanks to Lisa and Aaron, who pieced that leg back together from minuscule sized pieces over the course of several years, which takes a real patience and talent. And so we're grateful for that, as well as all of our funders and the BLM and the state lands for allowing us permits to work on the property. And so, as I said, we've brought the bones of Moros. You can be the very first people to see the skeleton of this new dinosaur. These guys are going to help me go over there and show them to you. We also have a slide of the limb bones. If you want to look at those growth lines for yourself under the microscope, you are more than welcome to do that. And I will take some questions.
So this may be a question that everybody's thinking. I'm always the one that asks the first question, incidentally. How do you know it's a Tyrannosaur?
So the question is, how do we know Moros is a Tyrannosaur? And this is one of the things that takes a really long time when you find a fragmentary specimen. So we spent about 1.5 years studying every bump and groove and muscle attachment and trait on this hind limb. And the structure of the hind limb, where the muscles attach, and the shape of the hind limb, particularly related to these speed characteristics, is one of the things that tells us that this is an early Tyrannosaur. Tyrannosaurs are really good and agile animals, and it shows up in the hind limb.
Other questions? If you're down here on the first floor, wave at me. I'll bring you a microphone. If you're on the second and third floors, I want you to be able to ask questions too. Just wave at me. I'll try to look up, and then we'll have you yell your questions, and we'll use the microphones to repeat them.
Did you find more than one specimen, and what percentage of the body did you find?
So we've just found the hind limb and some of these isolated teeth that we find in the bone beds of plant-eating dinosaurs. We've been out there, we've spent probably almost a year prospecting this area, and we've only found this one single specimen in all that time. So it really takes a lot of hunting to uncover the cryptic diversity of the dinosaurs that are in a formation. We may never find another specimen, but we sure hope we will.
Oh, here we go.
How, like, is the T-Rex small and it can, like, go fast?
You mean this little dinosaur here, or you mean a big T-Rex?
The little one.
The little one, this little dinosaur was lightning fast. It's probably one of the fastest tyrannosaurs that ever lived.
Sounds pretty cool to me. So, Lindsay, what kind of analysis do you have to do to determine that you have a new species? How do you know that this is a new kind of dinosaur?
Quite simple. You have to go all around the world comparing your bones to every other single fossil that's been found that it could possibly be and make sure it actually looks different.
You got lots of frequent flyer miles then.
No, but seriously, we compare them to other Tyrannosaur fossils to see if the anatomy is the same. And if the anatomy is different, then we know we're dealing with a new species.
Is there another dinosaur that, like, kind of compares to the mini Tyrannosaurus Rex that's not actually, like, a velociraptor or something like that?
I'm actually really glad you asked that question because I spent over a year making sure that this animal wasn't another type of dinosaur called an ornithomimid. Do you know what that is? So it's another type of dinosaur that's super fast running and very bird-like. And Moros is very, very similar to an ornithomimid dinosaur. But that's not surprising because they're kind of cousin groups. So that's why.
Do you have like any idea how fast it can go? Like just by looking at the leg, just by looking at the legs?
I don't have any idea how fast it would go, but I think that would be a great next step for us to do a study on its speed.
How did you made up the name?
The naming of dinosaurs is a really hard thing. It sounds like a simple thing, but we agonize over it. You know, we want to choose something that resonates with people. And for me, I want to choose something that symbolizes why this animal is important and what it teaches us. And so Moros is my way of indicating that this animal sort of foreshadows the T-Rex lineage in North America. So it's the first time we see these advanced tyrannosaurs appear in the continent, and so it's kind of setting the stage for the doom that will come.
How strong was its bite force?
These are all great questions. We do not have a skull for Moros yet. We are still out there looking, and if we had a skull, we could estimate just how strong its bite force was. But I can tell you that Tyrannosaurus had some of the strongest, most powerful bite forces of any animal that has ever lived, equivalent to standing a car on the end of a pencil, sort of for each tooth. So these things could crunch straight through the bones of plant-eating dinosaurs and chew them up and digest them.
How did you know it had feathers?
How did we know it had feathers? Well, we know that because we have other dinosaurs that are really closely related to Moros in China that are preserved in lake sediments, and they actually preserve the outlines of their feathers. And so we know that because the rest of the family of these Tyrannosaurs has feathers.
How did you know if it was a male or female?
What do you think it is? I'm guessing something about the drawing makes it seem like a male or a female? Yeah? We don't know if it's a male or a female. We can only really tell pregnant female dinosaurs. We can't distinguish non-pregnant females from males, actually, which is kind of unusual in the animal kingdom. But we don't know if Moros, this individual, was a male or a female. I just like purple.
I actually have a comment. It kind of looks like a mini Utyrannus.
Yep, kind of looks like a mini Utyrannus, but it's actually more advanced than that.
Great questions, everybody. I like it.
Do you have a hypothesis as to whether this animal hunted in packs or was a loner, kind of like the larger ones?
It's a really good question. We really don't know for these types of animals, and that's one thing that it's really hard to discover in the fossil record. You'd have to have, say, for example, a carcass of a plant-eating dinosaur that has embedded in it, teeth from a couple different individuals before you would really be able to be sure that you had a pack hunting scenario, and those kinds of things are really rare. So we don't know that for Moros. We do think that may be likely for juvenile tyrannosaurs of big ones, like juvenile T-Rex, for example, may have hunted in packs. But for this guy, we know so little. You guys are the first people to ever hear about it, and this is all the information we have about it right now.
Do you know how much he weighed?
Yeah, he weighed about 78 kilograms, so it's just under 200 pounds. This animal is about the size of a really large deer. So I was thinking about it the other day, and I realized that Moros' head would have been about 5 feet high, so it would have stared me right in the eyes. It's kind of a terrifying thought, but the things that keep paleontologists up at night.
How do you decide what the weight estimates are and like the reconstructions when you have a really partial specimen just based on a leg or something like that?
So what we've done to figure out, get a better handle on how much dinosaurs have weighed is that we take living and we measure the circumference of their limb bones, and then we've been able to develop a relationship with animals between those two factors, and then we can apply that to the dinosaur. So luckily we have a limb bone that we can take a circumference on, and then we can use that equation to get an estimate of its weight.
How did you know when it died out?
How do we know when Allosaurs died out? Well, we don't actually. That's one of the really fascinating things. We've been out hunting now around that are slightly younger than Moros because we want to pin down the exact time when Allosaurs went extinct in North America. All we know is that at 96 million years, they're still around, and by 81, for example, they seem to be gone. So sometime in that window, they went extinct.
Do you know what types of animals it ate?
Don't know what types of animals it ate for sure, but we have a lot of small plant eaters in this ecosystem that Moros lived with. We have a new dinosaur that Haviv is going to be naming as part of his graduate work, and this is a burrowing dinosaur, and we kind of find them everywhere. We have, a dozen or so specimens of this new burrowing dinosaur. So Moros probably hunted on the smaller plant eaters, whereas things like Siach, that giant allosaur, probably hunted on some of the larger plant eaters.
Was its bones hollow or something like that?
Yeah, the bones are hollow, and that's because these animals had to be very lightweight. And if you look at a modern bird today, that's a living representative of this type of dinosaur, and they have really hollow bones, so that characteristic transfers deep into the lineage of these types of dinosaurs. So when you go look at the fossil, you'll be able to see how hollow they are on the inside.
Personal hypothesis on what happened to the allosaurs, why they went missing.
So I think that what happened to the allosaurs was that this was a really dramatic interval of climate change in North America. So global temperature was rising, and it was at a high at this point. And sea level was rising, so the environment was changing a lot. And also, this was the time when flowering plants really started to take off, so the plant landscape was changing. It's likely that allosaurs preyed on sauropods to some extent, and sauropods also disappear at this time. So it may have been that their prey disappeared and they suffered as a consequence, but these changing climate trends are definitely what's causing them to go extinct.
Let's give Dr. Zanno one more round of applause. And come up on stage too, the rest of the team that worked on Moros. Out of the darkness. Give the team a round of applause. Incredible work. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for coming out for today's special announcement. if you are excited to meet Moros, that happens right outside of the Daily Planet Theater. There are 2 tables set up. To my right side, it would be the right side as you exit the theater. We do ask that you respect the fossils and the equipment that we have set up, so please don't touch anything unless somebody who looks like these people tell you that you can. So we want to make sure that these specimens remain pristine and intact for future generations to visit the museum, learn about, and explore. So I hope that everyone has a moment to actually take a look, maybe take a photo too, if that's all right, and ask questions. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you again real soon. Bye, everybody.